Hey everyone, Drew here, and today we are going to look at the second new Earth unit in a row, and as expected, it is Plague Bearer Aeon Lord Ossia. She has the highest attack stat in the entire game, so if you fully boost her, you get over 60k base attack. I mean, in return, of course, you get very low HP comparatively, but she also has extremely high speed. She has 630 speed, which means she will enter the battlefield very fast or get her first turn extremely early. And after getting the turn so early or quickly, the skill she is most likely gonna use is the first active skill, and that is Swift Counter. 75% damage to one enemy, generates 1 spirit and just costs 70 time units and gives her the counter status effect for 150 TU. Basically a very nice setup skill for her next possible active attacks. And here we have a few options. So one of them is Combo Reaper. Costing 2 spirit, 100 time units, it is able to attack 2 enemies at once for 300% damage in the base scenario. And this is also ignoring enemy damage reduction effects. Additionally, this can also heal Ossia for 50% of max HP, but only if she is already below 50% of max HP. And as the name of the skill already says, this is a combo skill, so that means it is unlocked each time the user damages an enemy with another attack. After using it, it gets locked again and needs to be unlocked once again. Her third skill is even more powerful, but has different conditions to be able to be used. It also costs 2 spirit, but this time actually 130 time units, which is quite something. But keep in mind, this attack also is able to attack 2 enemies, again for 300% damage as a basis. And this one actually heals Ossia for 50% of max HP in any scenario. Now she can only use this attack if she has the stealth or counter stance status effect when she gets the turn. But on the plus side, this attack basically ignores anything that can be ignored on the enemy units, except maybe for hold ground, which means she ignores all the enemy status effects, that is including stealth, which is important because it is an attack that is targeting 2. It also ignores damage reduction effects as the previous attack, but this one also ignores revenge passive skills and skin passive skills. I think this attack can actually be compared to Earth Musha's Stealth Fury, but this one also heals Ossia, as we said before, for 50%. And then the last skill, which is a one-time use skill, and it is very, very specific, but extremely powerful in return. This skill actually grants 2 enemies the sleep status effect. Yes, you heard that right, sleep, not any kind of poison status effect. This one actually grants sleep, and that for 300 time units, which is extremely long, the longest sleep in the whole game. And this can also be applied if that unit has already slept. So this is similar to the forced sleep skill from Bunny Reset. And on top of that, this sleep cannot be overwritten by poison, which of course is very helpful to poison because usually poison and sleep really don't mesh. But besides the fact that this can only be used once per battle, it can also only be used if the team has 1 or less spirit. So it basically is a crisis skill in that sense. She kind of makes up for it by producing 6 spirit when she uses this, and it only costs 50 time units, so she may quickly get to turn again afterwards. So this Sleeping Death Mk2 skill is extremely powerful. The question is, how often will we see it in the auto battles given the conditions that are applying? And this is also partially related to her passives, which we will look at next. And first we see the Aeon Plague Bearer plus passive skill, which means that whenever this unit goes below 50% HP, each enemy that is not sleeping or burning has a 75% chance to become poisoned. On top of that, if she survives that hit, she will gain the stealth status effect, she will become enraged, and she will produce 3 spirits. So a lot going on in this skill, and this could be very powerful. One thing to note though here is that this really only triggers on the damage that puts her below 50% HP. So to trigger again, she needs to go above 50% HP again first, which she can do with the previously discussed active skills, but also with the next passive skill, which has 3 paragraphs. That is already telling you something. So she does have 50% bonus to attacks against units that are poisoned. But the question here is a bit whether this is actually multiplicative with the enraged bonus. So for example, with her 300% base attack in the previous active skills, if she attacks poisoned units while being enraged, does she deal 600% damage or does she deal 675% of damage? That is one of the questions that I'm not entirely sure about. Evertale is notoriously a bit unclear in their wording of probabilities and multipliers. Now, as previously mentioned, she has another way besides the 2 active skills to heal back her HP, and this one is healing 30% whenever a sleeping enemy gets a turn, which, if she used Sleeping Death Mk2, isn't all that unlikely to trigger. And then the last bit I think is a very important one. That one is basically hold ground for her. So this unit actually comes with a hold ground, not a hold ground plus, not an endure. This is a hold ground, which can be very helpful against some of the meta units. Now, before I give you my thoughts on her potential for Arena and War, let's look at the AI analysis by Nizetto. And this time, I think it's really, really interesting. So on the threat level side, we can see that she gets 20% additional hate if she is either stealthed or has the counterstance status effect. The second condition isn't as straightforward, but I assume that she gets an additional 20% threat level if there is a situation on the battlefield where she could potentially use the Sleeping Death Mk2 active skill right now. So basically, if she has already used it, she will no longer have that kind of threat. And additionally, if she hasn't used it yet, the threat only gets active if your team has 1 or 0 spirit at the moment. Now looking at how she picks her active skill, we have a base weight of 1 for the swift counter, but digging a bit deeper into the data, it seems like she will actually like to use this even more if she is burning or poisoned, which makes a lot of sense because she is a hold ground unit and she can purify herself with, kind of getting the counter status effect. The base weight for Combo Reaper is also 1. And then we have 0.7 weight for Aeon Bane, which seems a bit low, but it gets increased if she is below 50%. But still, it seems a bit weird. There are some other multipliers as well that can increase this weight further, but very interested to see how this turns out on the battlefield. And then we have the last skill with a 10.0 weight. It is the Sleeping Death Mk2, which basically means if she can use it and gets her turn, then she will probably use it. And that makes sense given how powerful that skill is. Now, this skill should usually target purifiers, which also helps, kind of keeping that sleep going. It is a 300 time unit sleep, so it would be kind of a shame if, an enemy purifier just immediately purifies that sleep away again. So, yeah, that one makes a lot of sense from me from a skill weight perspective. Now, from what I've seen so far, this new Earth Ossia has received some mixed reviews. there have been quite a few who are disappointed to see how she turned out compared to her boss form that we already saw in the event, and others that are saying she is gonna be a new must-have unit. So what are my thoughts on it? My first impression is quite good of her, I have to say. I think she has way more potential than, for example, Jurel, the latest Earth unit, if the AI works well. And this is the big question mark for me on this unit, because there's just a lot of AI dependency. So let's consider the AI topic and a few scenarios in more details. To set herself up, usually she will use the Swift counter first, and if she does that, the counter actually increases her hate for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure on the reasoning behind that, but she is more likely to get attacked then. And what that also means is that if she gets attacked, she potentially goes under 50% HP, which is relatively easy because she has kind of low HP. And then she will gain the stealth status effect and will be able to use Aeon Bane with the additional benefit of 50% enrage bonus. And then on top of that, potentially having poisoned some of the enemy team, another 50% bonus attack. So basically getting a very, very strong hit off within possibly a very short time frame even. Now what's also nice is that because of her high speed, for example, if you start with her, she will already gain this counter stance before it's possible to actually stun her, which, potentially with the current stun meta isn't super unlikely. And then potentially she gets hit and gains the turn again, kind of nullifying the stun on her. But then the question still is, how does she weight all these different skills? I mentioned it in the AI analysis, and the base weights seem a bit weird for me, especially the Aeon Bane is something where I'm not quite sure about, and the Combo Reaper as well in comparison to the Swift counter. I hope she doesn't, use Swift counter all the time, just waiting for her to get hit. Although it can, of course, be a tactic because, as I said before, the counter is a very nice combo with her other passive skills. Now, there is some discussion around the 300% base damage for her two combo skills that are attacking two being a bit low, but honestly, I think it's quite good. Yes, it could be higher, but keep in mind that, for example, Earth Musha's Stealth Fury also only has 300% base attack, and she gains the 450% from her Enrage, which EOssia will also gain. Of course, in a different way from the Stealthy Vengeance, but still kind of nice in the whole composition of her skill set. And on top of that, with the kind of poison plague thing that she has going on, she could even gain even more additional bonus damage. And then this is very strong, especially because her time units are even more efficient than Earth Musha's, I think. And she combines that kind of healing capacity in that strong active skill as well. So no direct need for the Assassin Strain, especially because Combo Reaper is also a skill that actually ignores enemy damage reductions. Now, what I don't like so much, especially about the Combo Reaper, is that it only heals her if she is below 50%. I mean, there are some scenarios where this could actually help her, but I would always prefer her to have higher health, because the kind of danger that I see is that if she is already at, for example, 60% HP and her HP aren't that crazy high, as we mentioned before, and she gets hit by a very strong attack, she will trigger her hold ground, basically be at 1 HP, but then because of her passive, she will also gain the stealth status effect, which increases her threat level, and then I think she is at very high danger to die. Because in other scenarios, this kind of threat levels and her hold ground are actually kind of working in her favor, which we saw in a similar way with Fire Elmina and her Burning Heart, where when Fire Elmina hits her burning heart and, you know, loses her burn status effect and is at 1 HP, then suddenly she becomes pretty uninteresting to the enemy team and has the opportunity to heal back again. And we could see that with EOssia as well in some shape or form. You know, if she gets below 50% HP, she gains the stealth status effect, maybe she doesn't get the turn straight away, she gets attacked again, losing the stealth status effect because the passive doesn't trigger again, and then she is at 1 HP, but with possibly quite a low threat level. Now, I've mentioned the low HP quite a lot already, but in that same conversation, and especially going back to the kind of discussion around 300% damage not being all that much, I think it's important again to point out that she does have the highest attack stat in the game, and with all these kind of enrage and, you know, additional bonus damage against poisoned units, I think those attacks can be really lethal, especially against the Storm meta, where she gains an additional advantage from being of the element Earth, and also kind of gets a defense advantage against these very strong Storm attacks. Now, on the topic of her last skill, which needs 0 or 1 team spirit to be something that she can actually use, some have complained that, you know, her kind of passive that produces 3 spirit is kind of counteracting that and makes it even less likely that she can use it, which I agree with, but I think the 3 spirit production is still better than not having that, because it basically enables her to use the Combo Reaper and Aeon Bane to regain her health if, you know, another teammate doesn't use that spirit up first. And if that teammate is using it up, or if she gets the turn for some reason with 0 or 1 spirit, then she can use the Sleeping Death Mk2. I mean, she can only use it once anyways, so it is a bit gimmicky, but if she gets to use it, it can be quite game-changing. The danger here, of course, is her threat level rising if she can possibly use it. But for example, if the team spirit is like 3 and before her an ally gets the turn, uses 2 spirit, she gets the turn straight away at 1 spirit, of course her threat level goes up, but she already has the turn and she can use Sleeping Death Mk2 then, producing the 6 spirit, which is very nice. And in general, that kind of Aeon Plague Bearer plus passive with the 3 spirit production is really nice. Because if the AI works out well for her, she can kind of go into this cycle where she is able to use it again and again with her various forms of replenishing her HP. Now, a side feature that triggers in any case if she goes below 50% HP, so it's something that even triggers if she immediately dies with that attack that brings her below 50% HP, which is only possible pretty much if she's already burning or poisoned, except for some very specific attacks from some units. So that is a nice feature. It only has 75% probability and only affects non-burning units, and that is more of a nerf to her, and it doesn't affect sleeping units, which is more of a buff for her. But this is also the only way for her to poison opponents. Now, this leads me to another topic, and I know there's just a lot of topics on this unit, and that is which team composition does she fit in? There's a lot of talk about, okay, is she better with a poison team? Is she better with a sleep team? And of course, she can fit both of them, but I would actually argue that she doesn't necessarily need any of them. Of course, especially in a poison team, it's kind of nice that she has other supporters on her side that poison the opponents to give her that increased damage output. But to some degree, she can stand on her own, honestly. Of course, while this unit manages to bring sleep and poison into one without colliding, except, for example, lowering the possibility to poison additional opponents when two of them are sleeping because of the sleeping Death Mk2. The same cannot really be said for other poison and sleep units. These other poison and sleep units still don't really fit well next to each other. So possibly she could lay a bridge between those two teams in, for example, your arena lineup. But honestly, I don't really see it. I think you kind of need to decide where you put her. Either it's the sleep team or it's a poison team. Or, actually, referring back to what I said earlier, it is any other team. She really can work with pretty much all the other units except for Burn. So kind of keep her away from Burn, because Burn is also one of her main weaknesses. Not only because of her hold ground, but also because of the elemental disadvantage against many Burn units. Now on the positive side, damage from the Burn status effect that she newly gains is only applied after an attack on her, at which point she should already have the stealth status effect in many cases from her passive, kind of surviving on 1 HP with the stealth status effect. Of course, with a higher threat level, so still in high danger. And another team comp that will finally be doing well against her is Poison. So basically herself and other potential poison units. But the thing is, both Poison and Burn in the current meta are kind of, if I want to put it harshly, irrelevant. And EOssia could do a bit of work to bring kind of Poison back into fashion, but I don't see her making Poison super meta again all of a sudden. So these weaknesses are pretty mild in the context of the current arena meta. In war teams where fewer guards are around, she could be a quite interesting unit. But now wrapping it all up with the kind of arena potential that I see for her, in all honesty, this is for me personally the hardest unit to judge from the entire year so far. I am on quite a nice streak of very good tier predictions on the new units, but with this one, things might start to go wrong. My initial prediction for her is that she can actually reach the S tier, but it's very dependent on her AI. If her AI turns out to do some very stupid decisions, then she can basically become kind of irrelevant. I still think she could reach, kind of A or B tier then, but it's just not really that useful. On the other side, if her AI really pops off and it works well kind of in the context of all the other units, their hate on EOssia and how often she gets to kind of cycle through that 50% HP threshold, then SS tier is a very real possibility. And this is in the context of the Storm meta that we see. Yes, she is still kind of vulnerable to stuns, but has at least some form of counter to that in the counter stance status effect that she could potentially apply. And based on the AI numbers, she really likes to apply that counter status effect. Of course, stealth attacks against her, ignoring her counter stance effect, can be quite tricky for her, but the Plague Bearer Plus passive is triggered regardless, so she will get the stealth status effect if she goes below 50% in case of such an attack. And given that there's so many strong Storm stealth units right now, that kind of stealth attack might not bring her to her hold ground anyways. Now, obviously, as I'm recording this, I still have to cut this video together, but I have a feeling that this is probably my longest unit review yet, and I thank you if you actually sat through that and listened to my analysis. I feel like even now there's still more I could say about her, but everything is just so heavily dependent on her AI, and so I'll leave it at that. Watch out for my upcoming videos of her in high-level arena, which should give you a much better idea. As per usual, thanks for the materials used in this video to Lance.js, Saturn and Nizetto. Don't forget to like and subscribe to become a true carrot. It really helps my channel. And as always, thanks for watching.